It's a funny thing, isn't it? Anything can be considered art, and anyone can consider themselves an artist, whether it's functional art or art for art's sake. Whatever humans create is usually brought into existence with the hope that others will see it, use it, buy it, think about it, be affected by it in some way. We create and consume other creations out of necessity and desire. We want to leave our mark as individuals and be marked by others in order to fully steep ourselves in the human experience. But we want to do it on our own terms. We want to control, at least in some capacity, the experiences we have, so that we can enrich our lives without potentially losing parts of ourselves that we might not be able to recover. Imagine if, for an art installation, someone installed a playground swing right on the edge of one of the Grand Canyon's precipices. No safety harness, just you, needing to trust that the darkest part of your mind won't will you to let go every time you fly over the edge. Very few people would volunteer to sit on that swing, unless they had other intentions, if you know what I mean. This is what I mean by controlling our experiences. We want to absorb life in every way we can, but not if it comes at the price of harm or death. In today's episode, we'll be examining the cost of life and why it seems to be valued less than art. Today, we'll be honoring the memory of Laurie Keevil-Mathews. Tejon Pass. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've driven through it, or maybe the name has never even rolled across your sphere of existence until now. But like every other square inch of Earth on this planet, Tejon Pass is ancient. This mountain pass linking Southern California and the Great North to Central Valley is often called the Grapevine because beyond this pass, leading down into the basin, it teems with wild Californian grapevines. At least it used to. I'm not sure if they're still there. I've never been. Historians have said that the area around Gorman, California, just south of the crest of Tejon Pass, lies one of the oldest continuously used roadside stops in California. Pre-Columbian indigenous communities used to stop and trade in this location when it was the Tataviam village for tens of thousands of years, if not much, much longer. But this isn't all ancient history. The Tataviam people still exist. They survived the California genocide from 1846 to 1873, and the descendants consist of 3 surviving lineages of over 900 people, but of course, like most indigenous groups across the planet who have been subjected to the monstrous savagery of colonizers and settlers, today the Tataviam band is not federally recognized, which has prevented the tribe from being seen as sovereign and has essentially erased the identity of tribal members. But the Tataviam people, they're still here, and so is their history, regardless of how many highways are built. The land remains, and in many places the land remains unchanged. I share all of this with you to say that what you see today, wherever you look, in any direction, didn't exist 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 10,000 years ago. What we see today in this landscape, in our home, in our cities, is all because we imagined it could be. And so we transformed our landscape. And we perpetually redefine and redesign our own existence from minute to minute because of the choices we make, making who we once were lost to the past. The umbrellas. At some point in time, 2 world-renowned artists were searching for land and discovered Tejon Pass. They looked at this ancient mountain range, these rolling hills, and imagined something different. So they decided to change the landscape, just as humans have done for far too long of a stretch to even imagine. In this dusty, dry land, they envisioned a temporary art installation that would last just 21 days, showcasing umbrellas. 1,760 golden poppy-colored umbrellas, to be exact, dotting an 18-mile stretch of rolling, cascading hillsides in the Tejon Pass from Gorman on the south to the Grapevine on the north, around 60 miles north of Los Angeles. The second part of their exhibit would feature 1,340 sky blue umbrellas shipped to the Ibaraki Prefecture in Japan, 75 miles north of Tokyo. These two artists envisioned broad parasols of bold color injected into landscapes so naturally muted in hue that the presence of these creations would inevitably alter the way in which populations would look at their land long after the exhibits were removed. These artists meant to leave a mark, as all artists do, and so they went to work drawing together every piece and person needed to bring this $26 million self-financed project into existence. And this was no small feat. Over 24 landowners and state and county agencies needed to agree to cooperate with these artists. Helicopters were required, and a tidal wave of 960 people in California and 920 people in Japan would have to rally together to make this dream a reality. But why would so many people be needed to install just a bunch of brightly colored umbrellas? Well, because these umbrellas weren't your run-of-the-mill umbrellas. They were behemoths, gargantuan sky leviathans that were 19 feet tall and 28 feet across. Umbrellas perfectly sized for Olympian gods, or even cocktail umbrellas for their Mai Tais. These umbrellas consisted of fabric stretched tight, basically wrapped around an aluminum superstructure, and then fitted with a steel-framed base. But that's not all. These umbrellas, all 3,100 of them, weighed over 480 pounds each. They were all fabricated in Bakersfield and then installed by general contractor A.L. Huber. You might have briefly taken note of a few things I just mentioned in passing that caught your attention. Let's revisit those things. Like the fact that the installation was self-financed and cost $26 million, and that the same installation was being built in Japan. The sheer size of the structures, maybe you remember me mentioning that, the use of helicopters and scores of people involved, and government agencies involved, and the logistics of navigating a different country. This was no dinky endeavor. This was the kind of art done on such an inconceivable scale that the artists themselves must have been just as colossal. In reputation, I mean. And they were. They were artists Christo and Jeanne-Claude, married to their work, married to each other, and obsessed with rapping. Yes, that's correct. You're absolutely incorrect. Not rapping. The ultimate and only world-renowned rap artists of their time. And by rapping on a large scale, I mean these umbrellas were pretty tame compared to their other works. Christo and Jeanne-Claude considered themselves environmental artists, noted for their site-specific environmental installations, usually involving landmarks or even entire landscapes completely encapsulated and wrapped in fabric. These mammoth creations would take multiple years and sometimes decades of meticulous preparation that included political negotiating, environmental permits, public persuasion, and hearings if their creations were to be installed in either villages or small towns or national parks or on bodies of water. Interestingly, in one article, I read that Christo and Jeanne-Claude said their projects contained no deeper meaning than their immediate aesthetic impact, their purpose being simply for joy, beauty, and a new way of seeing the familiar. But in an interview published just 2 months prior to Christo's death, Christo described his projects as existing in their time, impossible to repeat. That is their power, because they cannot be bought, they cannot be possessed, they cannot be seen again. They're totally irrational, totally useless. Nobody needs them. The world can live without them. Quite a shift in the mentality revolving around the creations that they were bringing into existence. I wonder what changed. Jeanne-Claude and her husband were known for refusing grants, scholarships, donations, and all public money they chose to finance every installation themselves via the sale of their own work. Can we just... How does one... Never mind. Anyway, you get the point. Monumentally successful artist, doing their artsy thing, which is every artist's dream. And this installation in particular, this umbrella installation, attracted over 3 million visitors in the US and in Japan combined. People flocked from all around the world to come and see these creations. The exhibit was just one of those sights where you couldn't even begin to comprehend the scale of it, even when you were standing right in front of it. And because of that, and because it was temporary, it became a bucket list item that people flocked to see, just like every other installation that Christo and Jeanne-Claude had presented to the world. Keevil-Mathews was no different. Art is infectious. It's proof of existence, life-affirming, and for some reason, if given the opportunity, people want to bear witness to another human being's expression. They want to be involved in some way, to help beat the heart that's pushing art through the body of being. I want to tell you everything that I can about Keevil-Mathews, but I know almost nothing. I want to show you a picture of Laurie. I don't even have a single photograph. Like I said earlier on in this story, I wanted to examine the cost of life and why it seems to be valued less than art. But I don't think art or life is as cut and dry as that, because life is art in so many ways. The fact that each human on this planet is inspired to make their own life uniquely theirs in whatever ways they can turns their journey into something that can never be replicated by anyone else. It turns their journey into something that any person would want to learn about, hear about, if they could, because every human story is compelling and it's different from the next. People value art so much because they value the people who have the imagination to create it. People who have the ability to transform their visions into reality. People value the memories that art leaves them with once the artist is dead, because those memories ensure that the artist, who has the true value, lives on. Let's learn about Laurie. Laurie wanted that memory. She wanted to be a part of something that millions of other people were also a part of. She wanted to connect with the immortality of a memory waiting to be made that might change her outlook on life, the next path she took, or even the next dream that she dared to dream. Standalone art may possess a kind of power, but individual people, no matter how insignificant they may seem, have even greater power. It was a Saturday, and Laurie decided on a whim that she wanted to see. No, she needed to see the umbrella installation. So many of us do this. We know there's something we want to see. We find out how long we've got to see it. We think that we have all the time in the world. Life gets in the way, and then we realize we've only got a few days left, and then panic. We must do the thing. We must have the experience. And that was Laurie on this day. The umbrellas had their opening on October 9th, and the exhibit was meant to last 21 days. But on the 17th day, everything was cut short. It was October 26th and raining, but in weather that most would avoid, weather that would drag others down, Lori raced out into it. No planning, no hesitation. She just grabbed her husband, Michael's hand, and rushed out to take in the exhibit. I don't know if Lori had an extended moment to get lost in the rain or allow her mind to sink its teeth into this once-in-a-lifetime experience. I don't know if Lori laughed or told her husband how she felt or what she thought in that moment about what she was seeing. I don't know if they managed to stand under an umbrella or touch an umbrella. I don't know if Lori had time to do anything. Only her husband knows that. But before either of them knew what was happening, winds as high as 60 miles per hour kicked up, and a powerful blast ripped just one of those 1,760 golden poppy-colored umbrellas right out of its concrete block foundation. One of those 20-foot-tall, over 480-pound umbrellas tore loose and careened across the sodden brown hills toward Lori, injuring 3 other people in its path before slamming into Lori's back with full force, crushing her to death while pinning her against a boulder. This umbrella instantly snapped Lori's neck. In my research, I learned that when Christo and his wife found out what had occurred, they were both horrified and devastated. Christo ordered the installation both in the US and Japan to be closed immediately out of respect to Lori's memory, and disassembly began the next day, October 27th. But it turned out that the deconstruction of these massive structures would be equally as deadly. On October 31st, in Ibaraki Prefecture, Japan, 51-year-old crane operator Masaki Nakamura was electrocuted when his crane's arm accidentally touched a 65,000-watt high-tension line while he was helping to remove the umbrella sculptures. 2 deaths over the course of a few short days. Chaos. The land was quickly returned to its original condition, and most elements of the umbrellas were able to be recycled. But before the death had occurred of Masaki Nakamura, Christo and Jeanne-Claude had made a request to attend Lori's funeral before flying to Japan to assist with the rest of the deconstruction. Lori's family arranged for a private viewing the night before her service so the artists could express their anguish over the tragedy that had occurred and share in the grief with Lori's family and friends. Christo and his wife wept, and he said he couldn't find the words to describe how sorry he was. A lawsuit was filed in the following months, and while Christo's attorney Scott Hodes said, "We believe after a thorough investigation that the accident was not the fault of the artist, or with the way the umbrella was constructed, designed, or installed," Christo did choose to reach an undisclosed settlement with the family. It was known that the umbrella installation had at least $2 million in liability insurance, so there's that. It was reported that after the incident, Christo, for the first time in years, was without any projects because his ability to forge the coalitions that had made his works possible in the first place were most likely undermined and damaged by the 2 deaths in the Umbrellas exhibit. Executive director of the Public Art Fund in New York City, James Clark, said, "Incidents like this assume mythic proportions. It can't help but have an impact when review boards and agencies look at proposals." But review boards and proposals weren't something Laurie's family was thinking about. Christo and Jeanne-Claude's temporary pause in the production of their multi-million-dollar art installations wasn't a reality Laurie's friends were losing sleep over. Laurie's best friend expressed that the artist's remorse did little to ease her pain or anyone else's. "We all feel numb right now. It just doesn't seem possible that this happened." A whole entire life was gone in an instant, without warning. 33 years, and nothing would remain but pain and memories. Memories that would last longer than the art installation, and pain that would outlive those memories and last a lifetime. Christo knew this. At least, in that moment, I was sure that he did. But in a later interview, when Christo was asked how he viewed his umbrella project, he characterized it as stimulating and beautiful. "The meaning of death in relation to my work demonstrates that everything is possible. I borrow real space out in the real world. There is no make-believe, no theater, no spectacle. And the real world involves everything: risk, danger, beauty, energy, all we meet with in the real world. This project demonstrated that everything is possible because it is part of reality. The work was designed to generate a confrontation with nature and everything that nature brings." Then, his wife, Jeanne-Claude, said solemnly, "Christo's art is like a marriage. It's for better and for worse." Both artists said that they had feared car crashes or helicopters colliding as spectators marveled at their umbrella installation, but the possibility that a sudden wind might lift one of their umbrellas out of a concrete block seemed remote, since the umbrellas had been tested, supposedly, in a wind tunnel to withstand gusts of 65 miles per hour when opened. Now, this is just my opinion, but this project, these umbrellas, Christo and Jeanne-Claude, these environmental artists, I can see why their art is controversial. Like all artists, they take risks, and the bigger the idea, the more money you have, the more likely fatalities can occur when more and more people are involved, either in the project or are attracted to the project as spectators. Observers. They said their art is designed to generate a confrontation with nature, which is what the very presence of humanity is. We as individuals make these same statements with the concrete we pour, with the eternal, permanent waste we produce, and with the pollution we pump into the only air we have to breathe every single day. Maybe some of our confrontations with nature are aesthetically pleasing, but that doesn't make them any less harmful to all of the other life forms we trample just to make our point. Christo and Jeanne-Claude altered environments. This is very different from being called an environmental artist. Semantics, maybe. A more modern interpretation of the 90s label, perhaps, but it's what they did. When they transformed a naked landscape and pockmarked it with sculptures that had the capacity to become weapons if the wind was strong enough, they altered nature. They even altered the future of two different people. They cut it short, unknowingly. Christo decided to work on the documentation of his umbrella project. He said that in this interview, he was sorting through 19,000 slides and official papers that would eventually go into a book that he had intended to dedicate to Laurie Keevil-Mathews. He also planned to make the documentation available for museum shows. I looked for his book. I looked to see if the publisher, Harry N. Abrams, had released it. I wanted to read the dedication. I wanted to include it in this video, but I never found the book. According to Christo's wife, Jeanne-Claude said that they had received countless letters of support after the deaths, saying to them, "Think only of the joy you have brought millions of people. You must go on." She said that these letters were so wonderful to receive. Imagine the impact such letters would have had on the 𝗻𝗵𝙗 family or Laurie's family. Imagine if they had received countless letters from Christo's fans, expressing their sorrow and support, but still urging these families to remember the joy that Laurie and 𝗻𝗵𝙗's lives must have brought them. Imagine if their letters willed these families to go on the way that they willed Christo and Jeanne-Claude to go on. But these things never happen. These things didn't happen. Christo and Jeanne-Claude's fans pushed the artists to carry on and to keep creating despite the tragedy because of the joy their art injected into the world. And their fans wanted more. They wanted to consume more. But Laurie and 𝗻𝗵𝙗 offered them nothing but a memory that most people would prefer to forget and instead focus on the glory of the umbrellas. Through my research, I learned from the minister who conducted Laurie's eulogy that her childhood wasn't easy. For anyone watching this who didn't have an easy childhood, regardless of whatever you experienced, I know you know what that means, and the feelings those words bring up are most likely still too easily accessible to you. I learned that Laurie was an insurance agent who, according to her friends and family, celebrated life at every possible turn, and that at the age of 16, she was diagnosed with pheochromocytoma, a rare disease that attacks the adrenal gland. Laurie, at 33, had expected to live only 8 more years of life. I learned that she loved coasting around town in her bright red Firebird, a car that her friends said matched her spirit. I learned that she was perpetually struggling with her health, but nothing slowed her down because she kept bouncing back again and again. She kept fighting. Laurie learned, despite her difficult childhood and her continuous health struggles, to give her love whenever and wherever she could, according to her minister and her friends. They said she deeply loved people, loved to make everyone laugh, and she constantly sought out adventures and new experiences. And this is why she had to go see the umbrellas on display, they said. People said she was an incredible person, full of life, and even her neighbor across the street said that she was really, really going to miss her. 33-year-old Laurie Keevil-Mathews left behind her husband, all of the people she touched, all of her friends, her family, and on that day, she left her 8-year-old daughter, Jenny, motherless. Unlike Christo and Jeanne-Claude, no documentaries were made about Laurie's life. No coffee table books or prints will ever be displayed in museums or galleries about her childhood or her struggle with her illness or the strength of her spirit at having fought to live for as long as she had and battled for her family and battled for her daughter. But the umbrellas are gone, and her memory lives on. The art of her life endures. I couldn't find a single picture or article about who Misaki Nakamura was, or anything about his life before his death during the deconstruction. He remains a faceless mystery, unfortunately. I don't even have any pictures of Lori, but I do have her headstone to share with you. And this video. Now, with this drop in the ocean, with a bit more detail provided about who Lori was, I hope Lori Keevil-Mathews will be remembered for who she was and how she lived, which is far more important than how she died.